Right now, though, I want to welcome to the program Second Amendment attorney and scholar Steve Hallbrook. Steve, how you doing, sir?
Hey, Cam, glad to be on the show as usual.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, we've been talking for months now with Emily Miller of the Washington Times as she's been going through a very high-profile process of becoming a legal gun owner in the District of Columbia and writing about all of the problems that she has faced. She testified before the D.C. City Council a few weeks ago and told them about some of the problems, which, by the way, I would think they would be aware of, given the NRA's lawsuit here. But it looks like now the D.C. City Council is going to be changing some of the gun regulations in Washington, D.C. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, have you had a chance to take a look at these new proposed ordinances from the district?
Oh, yeah, we've studied them very carefully, so don't get your hopes up for anything major. Let's put this in context. The Court of Appeals told the District of Columbia that, hey, you haven't justified any registration requirement for long guns, and a lot of these weird provisions you have on handguns you haven't justified. We're going to send the case back. So they could see the handwriting on their wall that the Court of Appeals is displeased with their registration scheme. And what they ended up doing, conceitedly, there are some good points, but they've kept the major scheme of registration. All long guns have to be registered, and you know why they say they have to be registered? Well, there's these 2 or 3 times in the past 2 or 3 years, out-of-town people have come here, and like one guy shot at the White House. He was from Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't have registered a gun here, and even if he could, if he would do something like that, what possible nexus is there between registering a gun and preventing crime? I mean, the whole thing is so ridiculous. The Court of Appeals said you've got to show a connection between an important government interest, on the one hand, and actually achieving that interest with your legal requirement, your burden on the Second Amendment right. And so they give these examples of crimes, but they don't show any connection whatever. They kept the 3-year cancellation provision, where every 3 years your registration is canceled,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to re-register it if you get notice, or if you're not sick, if you're not out of town. Otherwise, you're a criminal. You know what they changed? That first they had it illegal where if you're an old guy and you have cataracts and you can't pass a driver's test, then you can't own a gun. so now they've made it where if you're legally blind, you cannot own a gun. So the widow who inherits the guns of this old guy when he dies, and she's saving them for the grandchildren, maybe she's legally blind. You know what they said to justify that? Well, you can't use the gun in self-defense. You're not capable. But what's wrong with storing it in your closet for your grandchildren, for Christ's sake?
Right.
So those are some of the really dumb provisions, and they're really major. I mean, they're still going to be knocking off tourists, arresting people from out of town who don't know any better. Although that gives rise to really the best thing they've done here, which has been little noticed, is that prosecutors may reduce charges to what's called an infraction instead of it being a misdemeanor where you can go to jail for 1 year. It can be an infraction where there's only a minor fine and not as much of a criminal record. Now, of course, it's discretionary with the prosecutor to do that, but that is progress. They made it where you only have to take the test once. You don't have to take it for every different gun you buy.
Right.
You don't have to take the 5-hour class plus range time, but you do have to have some kind of class by the chief, or you have to have police or military training, or you have to have a permit from another state. So there's still a training requirement, but it's not as onerous. I'm sure Emily's giving you details about her experience on training. They kept one handgun a month. They got rid of the ballistics test. The police department told them this doesn't do us any good, whatever, something that everybody knows. They kept the fingerprint requirement, so you're still treated like a criminal when you exercise this constitutional right. And one more good point, if you have a registered gun, you can possess any kind of ammunition. It used to be if you have only a .22 and you possess a 12-gauge shotgun shell, that's a crime. So it's still kind of freaky in the sense that anybody should be able to possess a round of ammo without having a registered gun for it. It's just another commodity in our society. So anyway, those are some little reforms. They're admittedly good, but the basic registration scheme is still there. It's still onerous. They've chipped away at it a little bit, but it's still an affront to constitutional rights.
Steve, is this going to impact the NRA's lawsuit against the district at all?
Well, the things that we complained about that are no longer part of the law, like no ballistics tests,
Right.
those will no longer be part of the case. And so we'll focus on long gun registration, why that shouldn't be a requirement at all. The Court of Appeals already upheld routine handgun registration, but will continue to argue against the provisions that that are not routine in the small number of other jurisdictions where they have it, like the every 3 years where they cancel your registration for a handgun or a long gun. That's completely ridiculous, and it seems like it's just made to make people into criminals who are law-abiding.
Talking with Steve Hallbrook, Second Amendment attorney and scholar. And Steve, where is the NRA's case right now?
Well, it's on hold.
Okay.
When the case was sent back down from the Court of Appeals, the district court has not taken action because actually not giving a reason for it, but I think it's obvious why, that this bill is pending. We do believe it will be passed. I think every member of the city council will vote for it. The mayor has already stated that he'll vote for it. By the way, some of the council members have publicly held their nose and said, well, we don't really like doing this, but we'll vote for it anyway. So it will pass, but until it does, there's really not much the court can do, I think, consistent with reasonable use of judicial resources. We need to wait until this actually passes. We need to know what the final version is going to be, if there's any differences, and then we'll go from there. We'll continue our challenge at that point.
All right. Steve Hallbrook, thank you, sir, so much for coming on the program. Great talking to you tonight, and hope we can do it again.
Same here, Ken. Thank you for calling.